From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holliday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here, and that makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. Now, as you know, longtime conspiracy realist, between our weekly episodes, we always like to bring you something a little extra, and this is one of our favorite parts of the week. You become the stars of the show. So if you have ever written to us, if you have spoken the right incantations into a reflective surface of your choice, or if, you've given us a phone call, tune in. You might be on the show, and we would love for you to be a part of it.
I mean, your phone is a black mirror in and of itself. It is a weird, reflective, ritualistic surface.
There we go. You kind of have to be the black mirror you want to see in the world. So we are going to have a fascinating, I think, conversation about following up on an earlier conversation about gene editing. That 3-parent baby thing really struck a chord with a lot of us. We are going to talk about, we don't want to sound like broken records with the AI stuff, but we are going to talk about a language learning model that is far different from what you have been reading about these days. I don't even want to say the name because I don't want to spoil it, but shout out to you, Specter. Thanks for hipping us to this one. Before we do any of that, we are immensely fortunate to hear from a longtime listener, friend of the show, friend of ours, named Ziggy, who, I don't know about you, Matt, but this was the first time I really learned about this story, as in Ziggy wrote to us. I think maybe I had seen a headline, but it gets chilling the deeper you go, right?
For sure. This is a story that actually showed up on my, whatever the Apple News thing is. It just kind of gives you a quick headline or something. Mm-hmm. Saw this on, I think it was on Monday, but Ziggy wrote to us on Tuesday as we record this. Ziggy, you might remember from back in the day, she wrote to us about the Mothman, and we read one of her messages on the air before. I think that was you, Noel. Ziggy is back with some information. So here's what Ziggy wrote. Hey guys, this past weekend, an apartment complex in Davenport, Iowa partially collapsed. There's been a big uproar because even though search and rescue hasn't been totally complete, the building was set to demolish 2 days after the collapse. That seems unreasonably too soon. Don't inspectors go in to find the cause? Secure enough of the building that residents could have a chance or notice whether they can retrieve items? Also, there are still survivors being found. A big Facebook campaign has started to find pets as well. I believe the demolition for today, Tuesday, as Ziggy was writing to us, has been put on hold, but haven't heard a definitive. Do you guys know why a city would want to demolish an active site so quickly? The only thing I can think of is chemical exposure, built in 1909, maybe asbestos, maybe lead. I included a CNN link below. Let me know what you think. As always, this email can be shared. Thank you for letting us know, Ziggy. You can call me Ziggy. And shout out to all the writers on strike. IATSE is behind you. Union strong. Best Zig.
Nice.
Okay.
Matt, what's going on here?
Well, this is a story that is still going on right now. There are still things happening there in Davenport, Iowa. We can give you just a little bit of the details and give you the latest reporting out of the local news. Specifically, I pulled up a Channel 6 NBC affiliate and their most recent reporting as of 2 hours before recording this episode. What happened was on Sunday, May 28th, an apartment complex, as Ziggy said, located there in Davenport, Iowa, specifically at 324 Main Street, partially collapsed. There's been a ton of reporting on it, real-time reporting, that again, that's why it's really developing right now, that shows images of the apartment. There were numerous people who actually fell when the apartment complex partially collapsed, people who were found in the rubble. There were 8 people that were recovered when I last was looking at this story. And as Ziggy stated, a woman was pulled from the wreckage, from the debris there, like literally hours before the city of Davenport had planned to demolish the entire building. And there are still a few people who are unaccounted for, at least as my best understanding as we're recording right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're recording on May 31st, 2023. And Matt, I found the same stuff that you had said. Also found, to Zig's question, found something really interesting in the Quad Cities subreddit. I don't know if you saw this, but there's something cartoonishly suspicious with the inspection records. I think an inspection occurred just days before the disaster, and Trotting Turtles over on the subreddit I mentioned seems to have pulled receipts showing that the city of Davenport altered the latest inspection record. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's some wonkiness going on. There's another article I want to cite here. Maybe let's cite this one, then we'll go back to that local NBC news report. There's an insider article, Business Insider, you can find titled, quote, "Tenants who lived in an Iowa building predicted it would collapse before it did," source says. And in here, it goes over a lot of the stuff you're talking about there, Ben, where there were serious plumbing issues within the building that were known to tenants. There were ceiling collapses that had been occurring in the building. And again, people who live there just were saying, this place needs some serious work or it's going down. You can read all about that if you want to. The official statement prior to today, the ones that I had read, were saying the reasoning behind demolishing the building ASAP was because they were nervous about possible damage to the surrounding area. If this building, which they said was going to collapse imminently, did in fact collapse, which way it collapsed, and how much damage that could occur. But one of the biggest things was a natural gas leak at the location of the collapse, like an active, serious natural gas leak that was ongoing and continuing and inaccessible, which could be a reason for collapse, but it could also be a reason to not collapse the thing. Try and, I don't know, I turn it off some other way. I don't know. That just seems super dangerous to me.
It would depend upon the nature of the gas leak, right? The degree of the leak, where is it, is it a matter of fixing just one pipe or something? It doesn't make sense to collapse an entire building for that. The idea of controlling the damage, of essentially cauterizing the wound to prevent more structural infection, which is a terrible analogy. That can make sense in certain ways. Over the years, in our How Stuff Works days, I remember traveling to watch controlled demolitions here in the city of Atlanta, just because we thought they looked really cool and we wanted to film them.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. When you look at the front of this building and the part that's collapsed, I mean, I'm not trying to be too conspiratorial or 9/11 was an inside job or anything, but it looks the way buildings look when they're sort of collapsed on purpose.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're dealing with here.
I know.
I hear what you're saying. I just want to kind of quell that a little bit, because it does appear that there was serious damage to this building, or there was not damage to the building. There was deterioration of the building that caused it to collapse where it did.
Got it.
At the very least, it sounds like we can, Ziggy, we can share with you that it seems there's something very off with the code inspections. The city of Davenport approved this inspection initially, which was by a private party, a private inspection outfit. And then after the building collapsed, the city went back and changed it from a past inspection to a failed inspection. And those are when I say this person on Reddit pulled the receipts, they have what appear to be screenshots of the change, of the before and after. And Matt, it sounds like you and I found a lot of similar things here, but we haven't found anything that appears to directly answer the question, Ziggy's excellent question, about the timing here, right? And the idea of, if they go through the demolition and they haven't searched for survivors, or if they go through with the demolition, there are survivors in there. I think right now there are 2 suspected people surviving?
I'll give you just some of the official reporting at NBC. They're saying yesterday, a Tuesday afternoon search of the apartment building didn't find any signs of human activity. That's what they're stating. But again, they did find somebody in there like right before they were going to blow the thing up. According to the Humane Society of Scott County, this is good news. Crews were able to rescue 6 cats, 2 snakes, and 1 lizard. So that's nice.
Yeah, assuming they're all not evil animals, right?
Like, 2 evil cats.
I have this Lex Luthor iguana in my head now. We're obviously not making light of this, and we have many more questions to answer here. I think we could ask for some help from our fellow conspiracy realist in Iowa. I will say, with a huge, huge caveat, that one of the more conspiratorial things I read goes back to the ownership of these companies.
Yeah. According to that NBC report, Andrew Wold, who owns the building, was, quote, cited Tuesday for not maintaining the building in a safe and sanitary condition. So there's a citation, I guess. That's so weird to think that you could allow the apartment complex that you own that has a ton of families in it. You just get cited if you allowed it to collapse. That's nuts.
So here's another thing I read. It's just tripping my spidey sense. And I want to hear what you guys think. So this comes to us from Twitter. Someone says, like you point out, Matt, the apartment building is owned by Andrew Wold Investments. The registered agent for this is a guy named Robert H. Gallagher. Gallagher is an attorney at a law firm called GMG, and he is the father of Robert S. Gallagher, the mayor of Bettendorf. For anybody outside of Iowa, that might sound confusing. You're saying, oh, you're talking about a disaster in Davenport. Why are you bringing this Bettendorf place into the mix? Bettendorf is so close to Davenport, from what we understand, that it's a conurbation. So because of those connections, which are kind of like tenuous threads, people are alleging, or at the very least heavily implying, possible corruption. Whoa. Again, nothing proven, but people have started to, put the red strings around the push pins here.
Would it be like we need to demolish the building as soon as possible to reduce, I don't know, to reduce
possible evidence of liability, or
maybe?
to erase the access to some kind of evidence that would prove willful negligence, or something that could result in very expensive settlements, something like that.
Because I had read early on that the property management company and or the owner, this Andrew Wold character, would possibly be charged with involuntary manslaughter or something to that effect if there are in fact deceased people within the debris, within the rubble. And that's why the unaccounted for people were so important. I don't know. It feels like either way you're going to get in big trouble because the building you own collapsed and potentially people died. So,
right.
I don't know.
And of course, the most important part there is the safety of the people involved who are innocent. I'm so glad that Ziggy brought this to us. It's one of those stories that could easily just fade into the background. It does feel like there's something wonky. I agree with you. I just don't know what it could be. You know what I mean? Yeah. We have to be very careful because we don't have any solid proof that would allow us to authoritatively declare a conspiracy afoot.
Correct. Well, with that, we will keep our eyes on this. You keep your ears out, and we will see you after the break.
And we have returned. We're going to hear a pretty fascinating thing from our pal Specter. Specter says the following: Ben, Matt, and Noel, I recently heard some news about DarkBERT, not Dilbert, DarkBERT, a ChatGPT type AI or LLM that is using information from the dark web. I have linked the video down below. I would love to hear a conversation about this on the air. You have my permission to use this email. My code name is Specter. Kudos and thank yous to you, Specter, for letting us use the email. telling us we can, and giving yourself a cool nickname. Specter says, thanks, and keep up the podcast. So this was pretty interesting. This comes from some very, very smart boffin types over in South Korea. We want to shout out these researchers: Yongjin Jin, Eugene Zhang, Jian Qi, CUI, Jin Woo Chung, Yongjae Lee, Sungwon Shin. Like a lot of people, a lot of real heavy hitters are working on this thing. And they are based out of the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. Here's what they say about DarkBERT. Quote, this AI model ventured into the depths of the dark web, an anonymous and concealed part of the internet, to index and gather information from its shadiest domains. I think before we get too far into this, we should talk a little bit about the dark web. We did some episodes on it in the nights of yore. It's funny because I think a lot of us who are not the hat wearing type, whether white hat or black hat, the type of folks who don't hang out at DEF CON every year.
Bucket hat
as well. Why not? I like it.
Sure.
The non-hacker, non-initiated community, because of the way the darknet is described in fear-mongering media and because of the way it's depicted in fiction, it seems automatically always associated with just abominable crimes, right?
Yeah, it's just an encrypted version of the internet, basically, right? Or I mean, any part of the internet can be encrypted, I imagine, but the idea is that it's sort of a sub-internet that can you have to have a certain type of browser to access it.
Yeah,
right,
it's actually
like
much less secure, right?
yeah, there's that. It depends. One person's security is another person's opportunity, really. It all depends on how much you trust the people who build the locks. And this that is a really disturbing thought. And I'm sorry that I put it on us, but it is true. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. To access these kind of things, you'll typically see somebody using a Tor browser, right? The Onion router, which is also not as secure as some people want you to think. Just being completely honest, check out our episode on that. The dark web is, like we said, it's concealed. It's not something that you would accidentally find. Probably the steps you have to take are pretty intentional, and it has illicit marketplaces. This was the home of the infamous Silk Road before that was shut down. This is where you will see people selling batches of personal info, SSNs, credit card numbers, etc. This is where you will see all kinds of sketchy people in various digital chat rooms. Be aware if you, for instance, are trying to do something like buy psychoactive or designer drugs or illegal substances that are illegal in your neck of the woods, be aware that the authorities are already all over this thing. And there are countless cases of people trying to do stuff like hire a hitman, which is, it's a dumb way to try to hire a hitman, just to be completely honest. And
no. Hire all your hitmen on the dark web and make sure you click on the links that have a picture of a guy with a gun who looks real surly. Make
with
sure
wraparound glasses.
Yeah. Always pick that
Mirrored
link
shades
when you're hiring hitmen.
Yeah. Because, the days of putting your classified ad in Soldier of Fortune are long gone, unfortunately. Unfortunately. Oh my God, whatever. So DarkBERT is built on something called the Roberta architecture. And what they found was that they could use variations of the large language model approach to combat cybercrime. They're thinking we can teach this thing in a way that is very close to fighting fire with fire. I want to give a shout out to Guru writing over on Cybersecurity News, who has a great kind of primer on DarkBERT. And DarkBERT first hit academia with a paper written by these researchers called DarkBERT, Illuminating the Language Model's Exploration of the Dark Web. And so they integrated their souped up AI or LLM with the Tor network and made a comprehensive database out of it. And so what they're arguing that they're not building an evil chat GPT, right? They're not building a chat GPT that says, I don't know. Here's what I was thinking of. You know how chat GPT right now, outside of a few very interesting loopholes, will not knowingly aid you or advise you in the commission of crimes.
Mm-hmm. Can't help you with that, Dave.
Right, exactly. And the initial thought I had was, is this the Sith Lord chat GPT? Is this the one that's going, I can only help you with crimes?
Well, Ben, I mean, if we're basing it on the graphics in this YouTube video that you linked to, it sure looks like it. What's that character in the Marvel Universe?
Thor.
The robot guy.
Ultron.
No, well, the one that was before Ultron.
Vision?
Yeah, it's like an evil dark version of Vision, like in these videos. It's like all this, like, I guess it's probably like, stock footage, CG kind of stuff, but it's in this video, dark web AI going to take over the world, ? DarkBERT and its impact on the world. All of the graphics are just like Terminator level creepy robot guys.
Yeah, this idea, this Skynet idea, which we've been talking about pretty frequently in our off-air group chats and stuff. This is closer and closer to reality. DarkBERT is created to be a new security tool. That's what they're saying. They're saying we're sending this poor guy out there into the fire and the darkness to fight these things. Right, to be one of the creatures that holds the door fast and closed. I don't know. I do like the idea of an evil chat GPT. I do like the idea of a ridiculously evil chat GPT based on the current capabilities. Like, I love the idea of saying, hey, chat GPT, can you help me with this long division question? And then having the thing respond and go, actually, I'm DarkBERT, and I can only help you with long division if it's part of a crime.
Yes, if it involves murder, most foul. Yes.
Well, what if it's just super sarcastic, like crazy sarcastic, and tells you how to do things wrong on purpose?
Is that not evil in and of itself, though, Matt? That's its own flavor of evil.
Guess so.
Okay, so this is very strange because I'm looking at this high-level stuff. None of us, including Codename Doc, so far as we know, are black hat hackers, and we're not the people working for the Puzzle Palace or anything like that. Thank goodness, because their life is difficult. We are very interested in this because it inevitably trickles down and affects the public. So DarkBERT is going to be able to, like, if everything goes as planned, it's going to be able to proactively identify and flag sites for ransomware leaks, sites for possible developing threats, domestic, foreign, you name it, threats in general. And if you read the paper, they are thankfully spending some time on the ethical considerations as well and limitations. Their ethical considerations are, how do we treat sensitive information? How do we mask that, right? We don't want, if we're trying to save hundreds of thousands of people from getting their credit cards stolen, we don't want to accidentally just hand that information to someone else, right? How do we control for these necessary ethical boundaries? And they also say, look, we have limited usage for non-English tasks because the dark web is not all in English. It's kind of Anglo-centric for us to assume that. And then like any other LLM, it depends on the data that it gathers, right? The data that it is able to compile and study. So I want to ask you guys, do you think this is a good move?
It's interesting because, based on what we were talking about at the top of this segment, is the dark web still actively being used for these nefarious things, given how accessible it is to law enforcement? But why? That's my. I know this is a separate question, but like you mentioned, Matt, like go ahead, do it. I know you were being tongue in cheek because then you'll get caught. But like, why are people still thinking this is like a safe space to conduct these kinds of illicit, off the books operations?
Well, often it's crews that go in and just purchase already hacked materials. Right. So they have a surreptitious way to pay for information that's logged
likely
there.
With some sort of cryptocurrency still, or as
probably,
okay.
I don't know, but someone would find a way that is much less traceable to pay for just the materials, literally for files that just have, in names and account numbers and birthdays and such.
Mm-hmm. And I think you guys know, I believe some of the best ways to really understand things are through metaphor and simile. So to attempt an answer to that question, Noel, which is a great question, in simile form, I would say we should imagine it as a numbers game. The criminals, right, or people attempting to commit crimes, picture them like a herd of antelope, and picture law enforcement like an apex predator. The apex predator is always outnumbered by the nature of its ecosystem, and it cannot get every member of the herd. So people are playing the odds and hoping that someone will be a little less buttoned up than they are. And often they're correct, unless they have done something that caught the attention of that lion out there in the savannah or what have you. I don't know how much scene painting we want to do here.
It's very Lion King. I love it.
It's very
very visual. Right? You did a great job, Ben.
Thank you, man. Thank you. This comparison is maybe at least a little bit useful because something like DarkBERT or a successor of DarkBERT could be an
DogBERT, perhaps.
it could be an automation of the lions. It could be an automation of the predators. And all of a sudden, what if you join your herd underground and you find out that there's not one lion anymore. There is a lion bot for each one of you. And then as it grows more sophisticated, it already knows your patterns. It knows where you're going to run. It knows when you're going to turn. All of a sudden, the equations become much more complicated.
Well, you're selling me on this thing pretty good right now, Ben. It does kind of sound like a good idea. What's the downside?
Just want to say, it sounds like Voltron to me. Underground lions? Come on.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Truly. I mean, what you're saying is true, and there's all this bad stuff going on the dark web, and this DarkBERT thing is becoming the lion that, like, tracks the bad actors. Not that gazelles are inherently bad actors, but for the purposes of the simile.
Terrible. They're terrible.
It's good, right? So how and why is it also bad?
Yeah, it's a great question because so we're describing the good case, the positive case, the aim of the creators. But we have to remember that a lot of the people who made huge breakthroughs in physics that were very positive for the world, their ideas led directly to the creation of nuclear weapons.
A lot of people that created AI are now coming forth and saying, I wish I hadn't done that thing. Mm-hmm.
I want to shout out, I think it was our pal Rebel Devils sent me this great meme. I'll have to send you guys, but it's like, how are those folks with those regrets? How are they not like Tim Robinson dressed as a hot dog in that I Think You Should Leave sketch? Mm-hmm. We have to figure out who could have done this.
No, but that's the beauty of it, man. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the guy's name. There's one dude in particular who worked for Google and was really responsible for a lot of the technology that led to this like language learning stuff. And now he is openly saying, I've done a bad thing.
Oh, Hinton, right? You're talking about.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
Jeffrey Hinton. He won the Nobel Prize of Computing.
And now he's coming out and saying, what I've done is now being repurposed and used in ways that I do not approve of. But that's the problem with just like nuclear technology or all of this stuff. Once it's out there, it's not up to you anymore. It's the same as the idea of the artist's intent is irrelevant. Once the art is out in the world, then it's up for interpretation by whomever gets their hands on it, Mm-hmm. And with art, it's a lot less nefarious and doesn't usually lead to world annihilating consequences. But in this case, it can.
Well, technology has no morals nor ethical quandaries of its own. Fire can burn as easily as it cooks, and it doesn't know the difference between what it's burning.
That's right.
So you could argue that this kind of technology is at the same crossroads, at the same precipice. The bad side of this, or the negative, is simply put, the human species does not entirely know what it's doing with this.
You think?
Yeah, I think.
In general, writ large.
Yeah, humanity's always been kind of a hold my beer crew, right? Yeah. Over the past.
Let's just give this a try. Let's throw the spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Oh, guys, this mushroom didn't kill me. Oh, crap, I'll try it.
Well, and I don't know if anybody saw the news about NVIDIA that's been happening this past week and weekend, but they basically said, hold my beer. Well, we got this.
We're going to be the guys. You know, we're ready to be first to market with this, or at the very least, we're going to pivot in a very public way. And Matt, we talked about this on the group text, like the stock price went up in a big way, right?
Yeah, because they developed the platforms that
That's right.
future emerging AI companies and commerce are going to need. So they're
But you know what else NVIDIA has done? These processor cards that are meant for video, for gaming and displays, they're always the thing that are used for like crypto mining. Mm-hmm. They've always been this thing that's been sort of repurposed and used in these other ways. This is almost an example of them just owning that and being like, you know what? We're going to just be that thing now. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think it's very interesting.
If villain you want, then villain I shall be. Right. Mm-hmm. But the thing we do have to add here is that Jeffrey Hinton had this wonderful interview with the New York Times a while back, and he said something that stuck out with me. This was in March, I think, of this year. He said, I console myself with the normal excuse. If I hadn't done it, somebody else would have. It's hard to see how you can prevent the bad actors from using it for bad things. So to be clear, I think the research that the DarkBERT folks have created, the stuff they've done, is necessary, is vital, and must be done. So I can't say enough good about them. But what I can say, and I think we can all agree, is that because this is technology, someone else can take control of it and do something else with it. And we always have to be vigilant about that concern. With that in mind, we're going to pause for a word from our sponsor, and we hope you have a good break. While you're on the break, just think about it and let us know what's the best way to hire someone these days.
Smoke
dark
signal.
web doesn't work.
Yeah.
Soldier of Fortune, smoke signal, maybe. Yeah. Well, let us know. We'll be back.
And we're back with one more piece of listener mail from you. This one is from you, Ryan. And it concerns the idea of gene editing. And I'm just going to read the email because it's pretty good. Hello. I have been binge listening to your shows for the past year. This is my first time writing in, though. I was listening to the discussion about gene editing, the mitochondrial DNA, and it got me thinking. It could cause a rift in the healthcare industry between health insurance companies and big pharma. Health insurance companies will probably be more inclined to pay for the gene editing because it would save them money for costly treatments later in life. However, big pharma would not want this to be cost effective because it could eliminate conditions that they make money on and therefore lower their profits. They would want the population to have these conditions or health defects so that their profit margins wouldn't dip. Also, it got me thinking that this could basically stop evolution for the human race. Oh, we talk about this all the time. Or potentially create a new race if you started to include DNA from animals to take on specific traits. It got me thinking of a Doctor Who episode entitled The Lazarus Effect. I think it might actually be The Lazarus Project. I Googled it. This was just a random thought I had while listening to you guys. Love the show. Keep up the fantastic work, Ryan. I love that you had this random thought while listening to us because this is going to get us going for at least 15 minutes, which is how long this segment's supposed to be.
It is great. It's something that, Ryan, you should hang out and grab a drink with us next time.
This is good
we're
stuff.
In the same town. This is the kind of stuff that we inevitably end up talking about, and it's because I think these are deep, common, continuing conversations. They're far older than us, and they're going to continue long after we're gone in some form. You may be interested in reading more about something called synthetic morphology. Synthetic morphology is this kind of emergent field that's bending the boundaries between what we could call natural and artificial, or perhaps manicured life. It asks how and how far we can alter the shapes and compositions of living matter. To your idea of, remember back in the P.T. Barnum days, the Fiji mermaids, the fake taxidermy stuff? Synthetic morphology is kind of possibly a real life version of that, but nowhere near as grotesque. Morphogenesis is just the development of a biological form, an organism. And the question is, how can we engineer living tissue to be more useful? in this regard.
It also, we talked about Vision, and thank you, Ben, for helping me come to that name, of the Marvel Universe, who has a speech he makes, and I believe it is WandaVision. Or maybe it's one of the movies. I think it's WandaVision, though, where he talks about the ship of Theseus. The idea of, like, at what point when a thing, every part of it has been replaced, is it still the original thing? So we're talking about defying evolution through gene editing. So if we have gotten to a point on a long enough timeline that all of us have been gene edited, like, are we still human? That's the question I think this begs. But it's not the question really even that Ryan proposed. We're talking here about something very practical or impractical, depending on your opinion, about health insurance and big pharma. The idea that health insurance companies would be all about this and that they would pay for it because long term it would save them money because people wouldn't be getting cancer anymore. People wouldn't be getting certain conditions that they would have to pay for. And big pharma, who, are spending lots of money in R&D developing things like cancer drugs, certain pharmaceutical products that treat very intensely debilitating conditions that are afflicting the human race, they would not be about this. And I would argue, and I think we talked about this a little off air, that there is currently kind of a bit of a cozy relationship between healthcare, health insurance, and big pharma.
Conflict of interest, for sure.
It's not one they want to talk about, but it feels like it exists. I don't know what y'all think, but it seems that way to me. There's a balance that is there's a balance in the force, and they don't want it to kind of skew too far one way or the other because that would screw one or both of their business models. So this, in theory, could be an interesting shakeup of that relationship.
Yeah,
I
but
agree.
isn't there? Sorry, I'm going back a couple thoughts there, Noel. But I think my thinking has changed a little bit when it comes to this, and you guys tell me if I'm just bonkers. But it does feel like some of these huge pharma groups would want to be the one that cures pancreatic cancer. Because if you think about the story that becomes, right?
Oh, of course.
We're the outfit that cured
Part of the
pancreatic
legacy of that
cancer.
company. Yeah.
Now we're developing, cures for all these other types of cancer. And it just becomes like, I don't know.
It's a hell of a byline, brought to you
right?
by the people who saved your life from pancreatic
But would
cancer.
gene editing be helmed by big pharma is the question.
Ultimately, if it
Kind
could
of,
be,
yes,
if it could be
right?
commodified, they would get their fingers in the pie, and that's not even necessarily villainous. Those conflicts of interest between privatized healthcare and big pharma, they exist because that synergy, that synergy equates to profits that are far greater than they could make individually in either one of those business areas. So, of course, if they can buy it, they will get into it. If they don't, then they're going to be the equivalent of people who turned down DVDs and said, nope, we're a VHS company.
Yeah.
That's what we're
God
gonna
forbid, Laserdisc. But when we're talking about these types of stories, the gene editing, this is research that's taking place independent of big pharma. Big pharma is not currently like helming this research. It's research that's happening in the academic space, right?
Yeah, but they fund it.
Well, but that's my question, though. In these stories, I haven't necessarily seen a name in big pharma associated with the news that's coming out. And you would think if big pharma actually had a handle on it, we wouldn't hear about it until they were ready to roll it out and sell it to us.
I mean, also to Matt's point, we've often wrestled with the conspiracy theory that the accusation or the allegation that there is some cache of secret miracle drugs, and that companies,
we know that's not true.
Companies like Pfizer or whatever said, yes, we have the cure to cancer or to MS or something.
We're holding it back.
We're holding it back because we need to figure out how to make it a lifelong treatment, how to make it a service instead of a cure. It doesn't seem that that's necessarily true. And we're not accusing these folks at the top of being amazing paragons of ethics. We're saying, it seems like they would make so much money by releasing it that the money would move. The money will always move. Well, and that's the size of it, man. I'm just saying, like, the opposite is true. Right. Like, if they had a cure to the pancreatic cancer thing, if they had a cure and they knew it worked, they would be so gassed, so stoked to get it out that they would ignore dangerous side effects.
For sure. Right? Oh, God, they're ignoring dangerous. I mean, there are these like weight loss drugs that are now being like, there's several, like it's a shot, and like a Ozempic, I think is one. And there's several. Yeah. And they're obviously, this is a new space where these big pharma companies are competing. Like one is by Novo Nordisk. One is by one of the other big 4 or 5 or however many. They're not that many. And they're actually, certain of them are being prescribed, quote unquote, off label, meaning that that's not what it's actually for, but if we prescribe it off label, it can do wonders, but it's not actually FDA approved yet. But if I know how to talk to my doctor, I can get him to prescribe it to me, and I can also get him to convince my insurance company to pay for it. So that is a modern example of what this is inevitably going to maybe become.
Quite possibly.
You see this botulism, Noel? It'll make your face all tight.
Oh my God, such a tight face. That's what I've always wanted. But my question,
like the discovery of Viagra, whatever.
But my question for y'all though is to your whole point about even like the conspiracy theory about big pharma holding back these cures and all of that stuff. If that were the case, we wouldn't be hearing about this unless it was in a big pharma press release.
Right.
The fact that we're hearing about it, that it is research that exists, means big pharma doesn't have their arms around this one yet. And they don't control it. They could buy it up. We know that they pay for a lot of that research. Obviously, that's true. And they're paying for research from like every corner of the scientific community, I'm sure. But they don't have this on lock. I would argue because of the way we're hearing about it. Otherwise, they would have done a big rollout and had you know what I mean? Like maybe I'm
It's still a
overthinking.
little Wild West. No, I think you're correct, because it's kind of like in the early days of podcasting, right? Just a mic, some relatively affordable equipment, and
some hot takes.
Some hot takes. Hopefully a vision or a mission of some sort that you believe in. But I know I said hopefully, but the thing is, big pharma has started to buy in more and more. I think just this year there was an accounting of how much money what we would call big pharma has put into this particular genre of biotech, and in 2021 alone, that number topped to $22.7 billion.
Jesus. Woo. Of course it has.
Of course 2021, excuse me.
That's insane.
Still, it's $22.7 billion. So they know what's on the way. They are buying in. I think the question we had asked when we were talking about this earlier too is maybe the most dangerous one. What happens when these changes, these mods, are heritable, right? What happens when you are born being able to see into the ultraviolet spectrum, and you know you will never have cancer because your great grandfather was super rich back in the day?
It changes the whole model. And I think specifically for the health insurance companies. So to Ryan's point, I think big pharma is in a much better position. Health insurance companies, they don't make cures. They don't make, biotech. They just pay for your maladies and charge you a premium accordingly. And if the whole spectrum changes, if the whole landscape of like what it means to be human changes, it's the way we talk about like if self-driving cars actually became, like a real going concern, it would change the industry of DUI lawyers. It would change the industry of, all of these like DUI courts and various things that you have to pay for when you do that. It would be a sea change. Yeah. And we haven't seen that yet happen with anything. We're sort of seeing it with AI in terms of what we talked about in the episode about the way it's being used for potentially debt collection and all of the new things that it's going to be used that's going to replace jobs. That's a sea change. It makes a pre-existing system irrelevant overnight. Just boom, it's gone. Like that's what this could do if it really became accessible.
And, I'm going to be completely honest. And this is just my opinion. So it's not a fact. It's not representative of the show. I do think privatized healthcare as it stands now is an industry that should die, because essentially it's a casino. What they're doing is you're being forced to gamble with an institution far more powerful than you. And the idea is that if you quote unquote win, then they will help combat these egregiously overpriced medical requirements, medical fees that they themselves created before you entered the casino. And if you lose, then that's just another thing where they say, sorry, you are sentenced to death for the crime of being poor.
We get to keep your money.
Yeah.
We get to keep the money that you've paid into this system for however many years up until the moment you actually needed it.
And again, it's not a criticism of the people. Private healthcare is like one of the top 2 employers in the United States. It is huge. And removing that industry, to your point, Noel, could have catastrophic economic consequences. I'm not attacking the people at all. I'm saying the system is dangerous.
The
and
adjusters, the
upon.
folks that you have to make a claim to. But again, those, like to our point that I just mentioned about ChatGPT replacing debt collectors, those people are operating off of a script. Those people are basically human robots operating at the behest of a much larger organization that they have no say over what the policies are. Their job is just to kind of repeat the company line, like follow their guidelines that they're given, their guardrails, just the same way as that a chatbot would. And again, I'm not dissing the people. This is an entry-level job. This is a medium-level job, depending on where you exist within the structure of the company. But
did you guys hear about the Sackler family's immunity?
Yeah, which we totally predicted, and it wasn't a tough prediction. It was like saying, oh, the month after June is 90% going to be July, unless something crazy happens. Essentially, Uncle Sam made a Faustian bargain with them, right? They made a devil's deal, and they said, provide us a cartoonish amount of money for these settlements, and you won't have to face consequences for your actions.
They pay $6 billion now, the Sackler family, because they own Purdue Pharma, which OxyContin. There's a whole, you can read about it. It's messed up.
To be clear, this was not a deal that was given to most opium dealers.
Oh, never. No, those people are just thrown in prison, or murdered.
And the Sacklers still have more than enough financial firepower to totally black bag us.
Well, not to spoil Succession, but a big part of that television program that I think we all enjoy is that for people at that echelon, there is really no losing. Even if you lose philosophically, like you don't get to be the big boss anymore or get to keep purveying the vision of your forefathers, you're still fine forever and all time. You're good. Like to the tune of billions, you're good. And there's no consequences. Even these fines, as exorbitant as they might seem on paper to people like us, to them, it's nothing. They're just sad they can't keep doing it. They just wish they could keep doing what they were doing before. And that's the biggest punishment for them, is that they can't.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I'm being fair because, in the interest of transparency, I haven't met these people personally.
Doesn't matter.
It's just, we can see the actions, right? We can see the ramifications. But again, Ryan, as we said, this is something that is a source of endless fascination for us. Do check out Synthetic Morphology. Scientific American, great article that came out just earlier this month by Philip Ball. Synthetic Morphology lets scientists create new life forms. I can't wait. What would you get? What would you guys get? Healthcare and big pharma aside, like if you were able to customize your body right now and you could get a
X-ray vision,
couple superpowers, X-ray vision.
X-ray vision.
Okay.
Gills,
Waterworld style.
You're a Gills guy.
I'm a Gills boy.
He knows about the water wars coming up.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
King of the orcas, huh?
That's right.
We should talk about this. You heard about the orcas that are just like, they've taught themselves to attack ships? I love that.
They got on the wrong side of Gladys.
That's for next time.
The beluga whale that was clearly
a spy from Russia.
Hanging out with humans. The beluga whale just showed up at the wrong classroom rocking a JanSport, basically.
hypercolor parachute pants.
No,
Yeah.
I have to make a confession. When you said you had a message from Ryan for today's episode, I thought you were talking about a different Ryan that wrote into us.
Okay.
Calling himself Nobbyhood. And
Well, I would have called him that if that was the Ryan that I was referring to.
well, the email starts, fellas, hate you guys. Terrible podcast.
I love that.
Oh,
one.
yeah.
You guys suck. And then he goes on to say, yeah, but then at the end he's
coolest
like,
guy.
what is he, Australian? Is
Yeah,
I'm mainly
yeah.
full of shit.
Well, he's
No,
from
I saw
the
that
U.S.
too.
He's lived in. We don't want to give specifics. But he's lived in Australia for like 15 years.
No, I saw that too, and I was really mad until I scanned the rest of the email and then realized how long it was, and that it wasn't full of just scathing, condemnations of us as human beings.
I
Yeah,
love
it was
that.
very nice.
Like that opener, that definitely hooked me too, because I think that's a cool way. That's like that's kind of how we talk to each other sometimes. You know what I mean? So, gosh, that was great to bring that up. And you know what? Thanks to all the Ryans here. You know, thanks,
absolutely.
Thanks to everybody who takes the time to write in. We are, we've obviously got some punchy energy here. I'm probably one of the worst because I've been running my clock kind of long. I might have to call it an evening, but we have so much cool stuff on the way, and you are the most important part of it. Write in, let us know your responses. Let us know what episodes we should do in the future. We can't wait for you to be a part of the show with us. What's a spoiler? Is there an episode we can tease that we have coming up? We talked about, people are going to have opinions about tipping. And then, and a certain cryptid in Ohio.
Don't even get me started on that one. But in the meantime, you can write to us. We are Conspiracy Stuff on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Conspiracy Stuff Show on Instagram and TikTok.
We have a phone number. 1-833-STDWYTK. Call the number. You've got 3 minutes. It's a voicemail. Give yourself a cool nickname. We don't care what it is. We just hope it's not on your driver's license if you have a driver's license. Do tell us if we can use your name and message on the air in one of these listener mail episodes. If you got more to say, they could fit in that 3 minutes. Instead, send us an email. We are
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.